Rain slicked the pavement until the loading dock looked like black glass. The 19-year-old delivery driver killed her engine and stepped out, the silence hitting harder than the cold. No lights. No guards. Just the echo of her own breath and the distant hum of the highway. She saw him near the wall. He was slumped on the concrete, jacket dark and soaked through, blood spreading beneath him in uneven pools. 2 gunshot wounds, one high, one low, still leaking, still fresh. His breathing came shallow and broken. In one hand, trembling, he clutched something that didn't belong in a place like this. Something small. Innocent. When she moved, his eyes snapped open. The gun came up fast, barrel shaking, aimed straight at her chest. Rain ran down the steel, dripping from the muzzle like a countdown. "Don't," he rasped. And then he told her not to call the police. "If you're ready for a story about power, dignity, forbidden love, and the sweetest revenge you've ever witnessed, then you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this channel brings you the most addictive romance stories you won't find anywhere else. Drop a fire in the comments if you're team revenge. And let's get into this story." She was 19 years old, and already tired in a way that felt permanent. The kind of tired that lived behind the eyes, that didn't go away with sleep because sleep never lasted long enough. The kind that came from balancing too many things on too little money, and knowing that if even one of them slipped, everything would come crashing down. Night deliveries paid better. Not much better, but enough to matter. Enough to keep her account from dipping into the red. Enough to stretch groceries another few days. Enough to make the difference between keeping the lights on and sitting in the dark with her phone flashlight pointed at unpaid bills. So she worked nights. She drove when other people slept. When the city thinned out and the roads belonged to truckers, warehouse shifts, and people who didn't have the luxury of choosing safer hours. She learned which neighborhoods went quiet after midnight and which never did. Learned how to park with her engine facing out. Learned to trust her instincts without letting fear paralyze her. Mistakes were expensive. She couldn't afford them. She couldn't afford a wrong turn, a cancelled order, a bad rating. One complaint could mean fewer deliveries. Fewer deliveries meant less money. Less money meant choosing which bill didn't get paid this month. Rent or food. Gas or tuition. There was no buffer. No safety net. She told herself it was temporary. Everything was temporary, she said. The debt. The exhaustion. The way her hands shook when she checked her balance before every shift. She just needed time. One good break. 1 month without surprises. The app chimed, sharp and cheerful, cutting through the low hum of her van. Final delivery. Industrial district. Rear loading dock. She almost declined it. Industrial runs were always a gamble. Long stretches of nothing. Poor lighting. Buildings that looked abandoned but weren't. Places where you could scream and no one would hear you. But the payout flashed on the screen, and her thumb hesitated. A decent tip. She accepted before she could talk herself out of it. The drive out took longer than usual. Streetlights grew farther apart. Businesses gave way to warehouses and chain-link fences. The rain started somewhere along the way, light at first, then harder, needling against the windshield until the world beyond the glass blurred and smeared. By the time she turned onto the final road, it was coming down steady and cold. The warehouse sat at the end of the block like a dead thing. Lawn low. Windowless. No signs lit. No trucks idling. No security booth glowing with bored fluorescent light. She slowed instinctively. Something about it felt off. Not dangerous, just wrong. Like walking into a room where a conversation had stopped too suddenly. She checked the address again. Checked the order. Everything matched. Probably a late shift. Probably inside. She parked near the loading dock, killed the engine, and sat there for a moment with her hands on the wheel, listening to the rain drum against the roof of the van. The heater rattled weakly. Her breath fogged the glass. Get in. Get out. Go home. She grabbed the delivery bag and stepped into the night. The cold bit through her jacket immediately. The rain soaked her hair, slid down the back of her neck. Her sneakers splashed through shallow puddles as she crossed the lot, the sound unnaturally loud in the empty space. No lights flicked on. No doors opened. The dock doors loomed ahead of her, metal and shadow. The overhead lamp that should have been on was dark, its glass cracked and useless. The security booth beside it was empty, door ajar, papers scattered inside like someone had left in a hurry. Her stomach tightened. She slowed, every sense suddenly awake. The air smelled wrong. Not just rain and oil and concrete, but something sharper underneath. Metallic. Faint, but there. She told herself it was nothing. That she was imagining it because she was tired. Because it was late. Because places like this always felt creepy when you were alone. She took another step. Then another. The rain muffled everything. The city felt far away here, sealed off by brick and steel. Her phone buzzed softly in her pocket, a reminder to complete the drop. She didn't reach for it. That was when she noticed the silence. No machinery. No distant voices. No footsteps. Even the highway noise felt muted, like the world had pulled back and left this stretch of concrete behind. Her grip tightened on the bag. She was close enough now to see dark shapes near the wall. Something slumped low to the ground, half hidden by shadow. Her heart rate picked up, slow at first, then faster. "Hello?" Her voice sounded thin, swallowed by the rain. No answer. She took another step, then stopped. She heard it then. Not loud. Not clear. Just a sound that didn't belong here. A soft, broken noise, almost lost beneath the rain. A whimper. Her breath caught as the sound came again, higher this time. Fragile. Wrong in a place like this. She stood frozen, the delivery bag slipping from her fingers, her pulse hammering as the sound grew louder. Crying. The sound pulled her forward before her mind could catch up. It wasn't loud. It wasn't frantic. It was thin and uneven, like something small had already cried itself tired and was trying again out of reflex. Each step she took toward it made her chest tighten, her instincts colliding in her throat. This was wrong. This was dangerous. This was not her problem. She rounded the corner of the loading dock, and saw everything at once. The man lay slumped against the brick wall, legs stretched awkwardly in front of him, head tipped back as rain streaked down his face. His jacket hung open, soaked through, clinging darkly to his chest. Blood pooled beneath him, spreading into the cracks in the concrete, mixing with rainwater until it looked almost black. 2 wounds. She saw them immediately. One high on his side, just beneath the ribs. One lower, near the hip. Both ugly. Both still bleeding. The metallic smell hit her full force now, sharp enough to make her swallow hard. Near his hand lay a car door, hanging open at an unnatural angle. The vehicle itself sat crooked a few feet away, front end smashed, steam curling weakly from beneath the hood. Glass littered the ground, sparkling under the broken lamp like scattered ice. This wasn't an accident. Her gaze dropped, and her breath left her in a rush. 2 infant car seats were positioned beside him, tucked as close to the wall as possible, shielded from the rain by his own body. Inside them, bundled in thin blankets already damp at the edges, were 2 babies. Their faces were red from crying. Tiny fists clenched. Their voices were the sound she'd heard, the sound that had stopped her cold. Her mind stuttered. Babies didn't belong here. Babies didn't belong in places where people were shot. She took a step forward without meaning to. That was when his eyes snapped open. The gun came up fast. Steel pointed straight at her chest, shaking violently in his grip. Rain slid along the barrel and dripped from the muzzle, each drop landing with a soft, sickening rhythm on the concrete between them. "Don't," he rasped. His voice was barely there, shredded by pain and effort. But the threat was clear. Her hands went up instantly, palms open, heart slamming so hard she thought it might break something inside her. I'm just delivering," she said, the words tumbling over each other. "I didn't." "Stop." His jaw tightened as he fought to keep the gun steady. "One step closer and I swear," He broke off, a sharp gasp cutting him short as pain tore through him. The gun wavered, dipped for a second. Time compressed. She could run. She should run. Her eyes flicked to the babies, their cries hitching as if they sensed the tension in the air. One of them let out a thin, exhausted sound that twisted something deep in her chest. "Please," she said softly, surprising herself. "You're bleeding badly. I can call an ambulance. They can help." "No." The word came out fierce, immediate. "No police. No hospital." Her heart sank. That sentence alone told her everything she didn't want to know. "If you don't get help, you're going to die," she said. "That's my problem." He coughed, a wet, ugly sound. Blood flecked his lips. She flinched despite herself. "They'll find me," he continued, eyes locked on hers now, sharp despite the pain. "And if they do, they'll take them." His gaze flicked toward the car seats. Something shifted inside her. He wasn't watching the street. He wasn't listening for sirens. He wasn't afraid of being arrested. He was afraid of someone else. "Who's they?" she asked. He didn't answer. His grip tightened on the gun, knuckles white, arm trembling harder now. Sweat mixed with rain on his forehead. "Leave," he said again, weaker this time. "You didn't see anything." Her instincts screamed at her to obey. To back away slowly. To get in her van and drive until this place disappeared in her rearview mirror. But her feet wouldn't move. The babies cried again, louder now. One of them had kicked a blanket loose, a tiny leg exposed to the cold rain. She took another step without thinking, and the gun snapped back up, inches steadier than before. "Stop!" His voice cracked. "I won't ask again." Her pulse roared in her ears. She was so aware of her body suddenly, the cold seeping into her clothes, the rain on her lashes, the weight of fear pressing down on her lungs. "You can't hold that forever," she said quietly, eyes flicking to his shaking arm. "You're losing blood. You're already fading." He swallowed hard. His breathing was shallow now, uneven. "You walk away," he said. "You live. You stay." He trailed off, the implication heavy between them. The rain intensified, drumming harder against the dock roof, as if urging her to decide. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Delivery reminder. The normalcy of it felt obscene. She thought of her bank balance. Of the empty fridge at home. Of how close she always lived to the edge. She thought of how fragile her life already felt, how one wrong move could ruin everything she'd scraped together. And she thought of the babies. They were so small. Too small to understand why they were cold. Why their father, because he had to be their father, the way his body curved protectively toward them, couldn't stand. She saw it clearly then. He wasn't hiding from danger. He was standing in front of it. Her voice shook when she spoke again. "If I leave, they'll die," she said. "All of you." He stared at her, something raw flickering across his face. Fear. Desperation. Maybe hope, though he seemed almost afraid of that. "You don't know what you're choosing," he said. "I know enough," she replied. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Rain streamed down between them, the gun still aimed, the baby still crying, the world narrowed to this single stretch of concrete. Then his arms sagged. Just slightly. His fingers loosened on the grip, the weapon dipping toward the ground as his strength gave out. He hissed through his teeth, eyes squeezing shut for a second. She moved. Fast but careful. She kicked the gun away with her foot before he could react, sending it skidding across the wet concrete. He didn't protest. Didn't even open his eyes. "I'm not calling the police," she said, kneeling beside him. "But I need to move you. You can't stay here." His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "If they see the van..." "They won't," she said, though she had no idea if that was true. "But we can't wait." She wrapped his arm around her shoulders, bracing herself as she helped him shift his weight. He was heavier than she expected, his body going slack against her as pain stole his strength. A sharp noise echoed somewhere beyond the warehouse. Footsteps. Or a door. Her head snapped up. The sound came again, closer this time. Her stomach dropped as she tightened her grip on him, dread flooding her chest. Someone else was out there. The van smelled like wet fabric and fear. She slammed the sliding doors shut with more force than necessary, hands shaking as she hurried around to the driver's seat. Rain streaked across the windshield, blurring the warehouse into a smear of shadow and sodium light. For a second, she just sat there, engine idling, heart hammering so hard it made her dizzy. Then she looked back. He was slumped against the interior wall, head tipped forward, jaw clenched against the pane. Blood had soaked through the towel she'd pressed to his side, dark and spreading. One of the babies had gone quiet, worn out from crying. The other made small, hiccuping sounds, as if unsure whether it was safe to stop. "We're leaving," she said, more to herself than to him. She pulled away from the curb fast, tires hissing on wet pavement. Every red light felt like a trap. Every passing car made her shoulders tense. She didn't look in the mirror for long, afraid of what she might see, afraid of who might be following. No sirens. No headlights gaining on her. Only the rain, and the sound of her own breathing. She didn't take him to a hospital. She didn't take him anywhere public. She drove home. Her apartment was small. One room, barely big enough for a bed and a fold-out table, a kitchenette that always smelled faintly of old coffee. The kind of place you rented because it was cheap, not because you wanted to be there. She parked out back, killed the lights, and sat for a moment, listening. Nothing. They moved quickly. She helped him inside, muscles burning as she half carried, half dragged him up the narrow stairs. He gritted his teeth but didn't make a sound. Even then, bleeding and barely upright, there was something controlled about him. He didn't panic. Didn't thrash. He moved when she told him to move. She laid him out on the floor, pushing aside the coffee table with her foot. The babies went down first, still strapped into their seats, placed gently near the wall where the heater blew warm air. "Stay with me," she said, already shrugging out of her jacket. "Don't pass out." His eyes tracked her movements. Sharp. Alert. Watching. "You've done enough," he said. "You should stop now." She laughed once, short and breathless. "That ship sailed when I dragged you into my van." She grabbed the first aid kit from beneath her sink, half empty, pieced together over years of minor emergencies. Gauze. Alcohol wipes. A needle and thread she'd once used to fix a torn strap. Not ideal. But it was something. She cut away the fabric around the wounds, hands surprisingly steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Up close, the injuries were worse than she'd thought. Angry. Deep. "You've been shot before," she said quietly, noticing the scars along his ribs. "Old ones?" He didn't deny it. "I heal." She cleaned the wounds as best she could, teeth clenched against the smell, against the way he flinched despite trying not to. When she stitched him, he finally let out a sound, a low, rough exhale that might have been pain or relief. "Why help me?" he asked at one point, voice strained. "You don't know me." She tied off the thread, trimmed it clean. "I know enough." His gaze flicked to the babies. That was the moment she saw it, the shift. Not fear for himself, but for them. Every time one of them stirred, his attention snapped back, even through the haze of pain. His body angled subtly toward them, as if he could shield them even lying on her floor. When she finished, she leaned back on her heels, exhaustion crashing down on her all at once. Her hands were streaked with dried blood. Her apartment felt smaller now, crowded with the weight of what she'd done. He reached into his jacket with his good hand. She tensed instantly. "Don't." He froze, then slowly withdrew a thick wallet instead of a weapon. It hit the floor with a heavy sound when he dropped it. It spilled open. Cards slid out. Black. Gold-edged. Names she didn't recognize. Cash, more than she'd seen in one place in her entire life. Her throat went dry. "This is what I am," he said quietly. "And this is what follows me." She met his eyes. People shot you twice in the street. That wasn't personal, he replied. It was business. The words should have sounded absurd. Instead, they landed with terrifying calm. They'll keep coming, he continued. Because I'm still alive. Because of them. His gaze moved, just briefly, to the babies. And because now you are involved. Her stomach twisted. I didn't agree to. You agreed when you chose not to leave, he said, not unkindly. There is no clean exit from this. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the heater and the soft breathing of the children. She sank down against the wall, pulling her knees to her chest. So what happens now? He studied her for a long moment. Not assessing her weakness, but her capability. You rest, he said. You listen. And you don't trust anyone who asks questions. A pause. And you should know something else. She looked up. That delivery, he said slowly, was never meant to reach you. Her heart skipped. What do you mean? The order was rerouted. The location changed at the last moment. Whoever did it knew you'd accept. Cold spread through her chest. She thought of the app chiming so cheerfully. Of her thumb hesitating. Of how close she'd come to declining. You weren't in the wrong place, he said. You were chosen. The room seemed to tilt as the truth settled in. Outside, somewhere down the block, a car door slammed. She held her breath. And for the first time since she'd found him bleeding in the rain, she understood something with terrifying clarity. This had never been an accident. The rain hadn't stopped. It tapped steadily against the windows, soft but relentless, like someone testing the glass over and over again. She hadn't realized how quiet the apartment was until that moment, how every small sound now felt amplified. The hum of the heater. The faint creak of the floorboards as the building settled. The uneven rhythm of his breathing. You were chosen. The words echoed in her head, refusing to settle into anything that made sense. She stood and crossed to the window, careful not to silhouette herself against the glass. The alley behind the building was dark, slick with rain, empty except for a row of trash bins and a flickering security light across the street. Nothing moved. Yet the feeling didn't go away. Chosen how? She asked, keeping her voice low. He shifted slightly, wincing as pain flared through his side. Even injured, he moved with a kind of discipline, controlled, economical. He didn't waste energy. You're reliable, he said. Young. No record. You don't cancel orders. You don't ask questions. Her chest tightened. You don't know me. I know the system, he replied. And I know how it's exploited. She turned back toward him. So you're saying someone hacked the app? Not hacked, he corrected. Manipulated. The delivery platform routes based on availability and acceptance patterns. They knew who would take it. They knew who wouldn't. She felt sick. Every late night. Every time she'd forced herself to accept one more job because the payout was just good enough. All of it had been turned into a profile. A weakness. They needed a courier who wouldn't draw attention. He continued. Someone disposable. The word landed hard. I was supposed to die there, he said simply. You were supposed to find me too late. Her hands curled into fists. Then why didn't they just kill you? They tried. His gaze drifted to the bandages. Twice. They expected the cold to finish the job. Or the police. Or fear. And the babies? She asked. His jaw tightened. For the first time, his composure cracked. They are leverage, he said. Against me. Against my rivals. Against anyone who would think twice. The room felt smaller. Closer. The walls seemed to press in as the truth assembled itself piece by piece. You said they'll come for me, she whispered. They already have, he replied. Her heart lurched. What do you mean? He nodded toward her phone, lying face up on the counter where she dropped it earlier. The screen lit up suddenly, a notification flashing across it. Missed call. Unknown number. Then another. And another. Her pulse spiked. I didn't give anyone my number. You don't have to, he said. It's connected to the app. To your account. To the order. Her mouth went dry. So what do I do? He met her gaze. You don't answer. You don't leave. And you don't trust anyone who says they're here to help. A distant sound drifted through the night. Tires on wet pavement, slowing. Not stopping. Just slowing. She moved back to the window, peering down through the narrow gap between the curtain and the frame. A dark sedan rolled past the building once. Then again. Her stomach dropped. Is that them? She asked. Maybe, he said. Maybe not. They don't rush things. They watch. The words sent a chill through her. She backed away from the window. You still haven't told me who you are. He studied her for a long moment, as if weighing something. Trust. Risk. Timing. My name doesn't matter, he said finally. What I am does. He reached into his jacket again. This time, he didn't stop when she tensed. He pulled out a phone, sleek, unmarked. Not like hers. No cracks. No cheap case. He powered it on. The screen filled with messages. Names she didn't recognize. Numbers without labels. Short, coded phrases. Coordinates. Times. Orders. She stared at it, dread pooling in her gut. I run a syndicate, he said. One of the largest Korean organizations operating outside Seoul. Money. Logistics. Enforcement. Her breath caught. You're Mafia. A faint smile tugged at his mouth. Not pride. Something closer to resignation. That's the word people use, he said. It makes things simpler. Her mind reeled. The man she dragged into her apartment wasn't just dangerous, he was powerful. The kind of powerful that attracted enemies with patience and resources. And they tried to kill you, she said. They are still trying, he corrected. Because if I die, there's a vacuum. And vacuums invite chaos. And me? She asked. Where do I fit into this? He didn't answer immediately. Outside, the sedan stopped. Her heart slammed into her ribs. She rushed back to the window, careful this time, barely breathing as she looked down. The car idled at the curb. No lights. No one getting out. Just waiting. They know where we are, she said, panic creeping into her voice. Not yet, he replied. They know where you are. The distinction felt meaningless and terrifying. They'll knock, he continued. Eventually. Or they'll watch to see who comes and goes. Either way, your life as it was is over. Her hands shook. I didn't sign up for this. No, he agreed. You were conscripted. The babies stirred, one of them letting out a soft cry. Instinctively, she moved toward them, lifting the loose blanket and tucking it back into place. The simple act grounded her, just for a second. You saved them, he said quietly. That matters. She laughed bitterly. To who? To me, he replied. And to people who understand debts. She looked at him sharply. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, he said. It's supposed to make you understand why you're still alive. A sharp knock echoed through the apartment building. Not at her door. Downstairs. Her breath froze in her lungs. Footsteps followed. Slow. Measured. Coming up. One flight. She whispered. He pushed himself up onto his elbows despite the pain. Listen to me, he said urgently. If they ask, you don't know me. You found nothing. You're scared. You cooperate. And if they don't ask? She said. His eyes hardened. Then they already know. The footsteps stopped. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then the knock came again. This time, at her door. She and the man locked eyes as the sound echoed through the small apartment, the rain outside masking nothing now. They had been found. The knock came again. Harder this time. Her heart felt like it stopped, then slammed back into motion so violently she thought she might black out. The babies stirred at the sound, their small bodies tensing, sensing the fear in the room. "Don't answer," he whispered. Too late. The handle rattled. A voice followed, calm, almost polite. "Miss? We're with building security. We just need to ask you a few questions." Security didn't come at 3 in the morning. Security didn't bring cars with no plates. She backed away from the door slowly, every instinct screaming. The man pushed himself up, teeth clenched as pain tore through him. He was still weak, but danger sharpened him. "They won't wait," he said. "When they move, it'll be fast." The lock clicked. Wood splintered inward as the door was kicked once, twice, then burst open in a spray of broken frame and flying debris. They flooded in. 3 men. Dark clothes. No insignia. Guns already up. She screamed. One of them lunged for the car seats. Her body moved before her mind did. She grabbed the nearest thing, a metal lamp, and swung with everything she had. It connected with a sickening crack against the man's wrist. He shouted, the gun clattering across the floor. Chaos exploded. Gunfire ripped through the apartment, deafening and bright. Plaster blew apart. Glass shattered. She felt heat whip past her ear as she dropped to the floor, crawling toward the babies. The man was on his feet now, staggering but deadly. He moved like someone who had done this too many times to count. Controlled. Precise. A single shot. Then another. One of the intruders went down hard, blood spreading across the cheap carpet. The second turned and fired blindly. The window behind her exploded outward, rain and night rushing in as shards of glass rained down. She pulled the babies to her chest, curling over them, her back burning as something sliced across her shoulder. Pain flared, but she didn't scream. The third man grabbed her arm, yanking her up. His grip was iron, his breath hot and sour against her face. "You should have stayed out of it," he snarled. The man behind her shouted something, sharp, furious. Then a gunshot rang out. The grip on her arm vanished. The body hit the floor with a heavy, final sound. Silence crashed down in the aftermath, broken only by the baby's screams and her own ragged breathing. Smoke hung in the air. The apartment looked like a war zone, blood, broken furniture, bullet holes torn through walls that had once felt safe. She looked up at him. He was standing, but barely. Blood soaked through his bandages now, fresh and dark. His hand shook around the gun. "You have to go," he said. "Now." She shook her head, tears blurring her vision. "You're hurt." "I can't." "They'll send more," he snapped. This was a test. Her chest heaved. She looked down at the babies, their faces red and wet with tears, their small bodies trembling in her arms. A siren wailed in the distance. Not close enough. Not fast enough. He stepped toward her, and stumbled. She caught him. For a second, they stood there together, pressed into each other by necessity and fear. His weight was heavy, warm, real. Human. "They won't stop," he said quietly, almost gently now. "Not for me. Not for you." She understood then. This wasn't something she could survive by hiding. Or pretending. Or waiting it out. The life she'd had, the careful budgeting, the late-night deliveries, the quiet hope that things might get easier, was already gone. It had ended the moment she chose not to walk away in the rain. Outside, engines roared to life. More cars. She swallowed hard. "What do we do?" she asked. His eyes met hers, steady despite everything. "We disappear," he said. "Or we fight." She looked around the ruined apartment. At the blood on her hands. At the broken door. At the babies. She adjusted her grip, pulling them closer, shielding them with her body as she straightened her spine. "Then we go," she said. "Right now." A nod. Sharp. Respectful. They moved, fast and quiet, out the back stairwell, down into the rain-soaked alley where shadows swallowed them whole. Behind them, lights flicked on in neighboring apartments. Voices rose. Confusion spread. Ahead of them was darkness. Pursuit. A future she couldn't see. But as she ran, heart pounding, pain screaming through her shoulder, one truth burned through the fear and the grief and the shock. She had chosen. And there was no turning back now. They didn't stop running until the city thinned and the rain softened into a quiet mist. By the time dawn began to bleed into the sky, they were somewhere anonymous, an empty stretch of road, a borrowed car, the world reduced to the steady sound of tires on asphalt. The babies slept at last, worn out and unaware, their small chests rising and falling in fragile rhythm. She sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, hands still trembling. Dried blood marked her sleeves. Her shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat. When she closed her eyes, she could still hear the door splintering, still feel the weight of the moment when everything broke. Behind the wheel, he drove in silence. Focused. Alive. They hadn't won. She knew that. The danger hadn't disappeared, it had simply moved with them. Somewhere behind, people were already retracing steps, counting bodies, asking questions. Nothing would ever be simple again. She wasn't just a delivery driver now. She was a witness. A protector. A liability. The sun crept higher, painting the road gold for a brief, fragile moment. And in that quiet, with the city far behind them, she held on to the calm, knowing it wouldn't last, but grateful it existed at all. Stories like this don't end cleanly. They leave scars. They leave questions. And they stay with you long after the last scene fades. If this story pulled you in, if you felt the fear, the weight of the choices, the quiet moments between the chaos, then you're already part of it. These are the kinds of stories we tell here. Stories about ordinary people pushed into extraordinary situations, and the moments that changed them forever. Stay with us. Share your thoughts in the comments. Let us know what stayed with you. Because the darkest stories are easier to face when we face them together.